Hey, welcome to the You Ask the Pros Answer podcast. Your questions answered by the pros you trust. My name is Cole. I'm one of the hosts on the show. Welcome to another Friday episode. If you were here last week, you got to hear part one of a conversation I had with Aaron Rogers. We discussed many things, but the main topic was how can you find a reliable contractor in your area. Last week, we focused on a lot of the nuts and bolts of just becoming a business and all that goes into that. This week, I had a chance to finish up my conversation with Aaron, and we really delved more deeply into what makes a contractor good at the trade that he or she is performing. Hope that this episode is beneficial to you. All right, without further ado, here's part two of my conversation with Aaron Rogers. This is the You Ask the Pros Answer podcast. Do you have questions about an upcoming exterior contracting project? We've got answers. Welcome to the You Ask the Pros Answer podcast. All right, so to this point, we've been talking a lot about foundational criteria to look for, like, is this company legit? Can they be trusted? Just from like a business standpoint, from a safety standpoint. We haven't really touched yet on, is this company good at what they do? We've talked a little bit about that with Google reviews and recommendations from Facebook. Yeah. I want to touch on manufacturer partnerships a little bit. So for instance, at Pro Exteriors, we are a master elite contractor and part of the President's Club with GAF. Could you explain just a little bit about what those manufacturer partnerships really mean? Because I know many of us have seen stickers on the side of trucks. We've seen brag sheets when a homeowner sat down with a salesperson. Can those just be bought? What criteria have to be met? And you can go in as much depth as you want, but just in general, what do those partnerships mean?
So realistically, anytime you see somebody that's certified with a manufacturer or has, a certified installer badge or something along those lines, they can be a great resource to say, like, hey, this is a quality company. They're certified with a manufacturer. So obviously the manufacturer has gone through the vetting process. Typically, it's going to be kind of another check mark to say, like, hey, this is a reputable contractor. Most of those certifications are not what we call pay to play. So most of them are not going to be something that any Joe Schmo contractor can go, hey, I want to get certified with your company. Here's $500 for the annual fee. And then I get list me on your website and give me some stickers and whatnot. Most of them are not. There are some out there that pretty much play out that way. Again, the same process of $75 in 15 minutes, I can make you a contractor. There's companies out there that will certify me on day one with no proof of, insurance, with no proof of me having any sort of knowledge to install their product, no testing, no nothing. So there are companies out there like that. In the instance of, because we are a master elite contractor with GAF, I'll use that as kind of a sounding platform. So okay. With the GAF Master Elite program, there are levels to GAF certified program. So there's a certified contractor and there's going to be a Master Elite. With the Master Elite program, there are requirements as far as like how many years you actually have to be certified with them, how many years you've been in business to even be qualified to be in the certified contractor program. They're going to annually, they're going to check up on your business license. They're going to check up on your insurance, and they're going to do the things that we expect the consumer to do, where they're going to go out there and verify these things. They're going to verify that you're in good standing with your suppliers. They're going to verify you're in good standing with your creditors, and they're going to verify all your insurance and what have you. So dealing with companies like that, if you read into what the actual program entails, it's really easy to figure out whether or not the program is legit. There's other certifications you can get as far as being like a qualified installer for certain products. Those typically require you to do some sort of either book test or hands-on testing. Some require both. Again, if it's a product you're very interested in, it doesn't take much to physically call the 800 number for that company and verify, just what that certification means.
Yeah.
Again, everything looks great on paper. You still have to do your research. Anybody can say I'm this and I'm that. If you don't verify it, then anybody can be anything.
All right. So at this point, we've clicked on a couple of websites from our Google search. We've looked at their social media. We've looked through some of the partnerships that they have listed. When a customer sits down with a salesperson and they explain the job that they're looking to get done, what should that customer expect in return from that salesperson as far as describing the work that is being proposed? Are you looking at like a one-page kind of handwritten description? Are you looking for a printout? How much detail are you looking for?
If they claim it, if they sell it to you verbally, it should be in writing. If they talk about, the certifications that their company has, they should be able to provide it in writing. If they talk about the, their brick and mortar location, the address should be on the contract. If they talk about how great their warranty is, the actual company's warranty, then that warranty should be part of the contract. If they're going to give you multiple options, all that stuff should be all very neat, organized within the contract itself. There's some details that matter and some details that don't. The actual price is very important. You should have a piece of paper that requires not only your signature, but also the contractor's signature that has a actual defined price. If they tell you it's included, it should be written on the contract.
Okay.
Like for roofing, like we're going to replace your roof. And yeah, we normally include like maybe 4 sheets of plywood. If it's not written in that contract, they can still charge you for it. Again, a contract is of utmost importance. Don't ever do anything to your home without having something in writing. So all those little details, 100%, I want the brand that you're using. If you're listing out 10 different products, that you're going to use, they're made by somebody. I want to know the brand. You all know that every single product ever manufactured has a generic version. And, the generic version is not always lesser quality. Sometimes can just be lesser price. But in many cases, there are generic products that are just cheap.
Yeah.
But in theory, they're the same. Specifically talking about like synthetic underlayments for roofing, there are tons of synthetic underlayments. There's synthetic underlayments that can be $34 for a 10 square roll, and there's synthetic underlayments that are $275 for a 10 square roll. They are both synthetic underlayments. So if you have a contract that says like, oh, we're going to install synthetic underlayment, okay, which one? So again, if they take the time to list it out or they talk about specific products during the sales process, when the actual contract gets written, it should have 100% every one of those details listed out. The total price, any potential add-ons, any potential change orders you might run into. Sometimes we can't really put price tags on that stuff. But if it's kind of a very normal thing in your trade to have like this kind of be a normal thing that gets replaced, then, if they have the ability to give you kind of an upfront price so you have the potential to know what the back end would be, that's ideal. Having a signature page is ideal. Again, typically you're going to want both of you to sign. Your signature gives them the proof that you wanted the job done. Some states require both signatures, some states don't. But yeah, ultimately, the big things are going to be like the warranty information, the product information, and the total price. Those 3 things are crucial. And, we run across it quite often where people had, very large, multi-tens of thousands of dollar projects where they pretty much had a handshake deal with a guy. Or, their contract was written on a 1-page sheet and, 6 months after the project is done, something happens and the guy says, oh, that's not covered under your warranty. Well, how do you know? Because you don't have a copy of the warranty. Well, he said everything was covered. That's obviously not the truth. So if you're relying on it for the long term, then get it in writing.
All right. While we're on the topic of the contract, let's say you're getting ready to sign one with a company and they ask you for a deposit to get things going. That's pretty normal. What is the amount of the deposit or the percentage of the total project cost is within the normal range?
So it very much varies. Some states have laws as far as what you're allowed to legally accept as a deposit. Maryland has laws that are, it can only be a certain percentage of the project. Sometimes it's based upon the total cost of the job. Realistically, anything over a 50% deposit is a ginormous red flag. If somebody wants you to give them, if they're 2 months out and they want a 50% deposit to do a project, that's a ginormous red flag. A lot of this falls under common sense. If you're asking a guy to do a $500 repair to your house and he needs a deposit in order to do it, red flag. Okay. If it's a $10,000 project and the guy's like, I need $7,000 up front, red flag. So my rule of thumb is never pay anybody more than 50% of a deposit. But again, use your best judgment. If you're signing a $50,000 contract and they ask for $25,000 up front, that's a huge red flag. I usually tell people, like, we as a company, we kind of have a benchmark as far as like what we expect to deposit for. Over a certain dollar amount, we're going to expect a deposit. We normally go for 33%. We do that for one of two reasons. Most of the time, like special order material, we want you to pay for any special order material before we order it, because if you cancel the contract, I don't want to be stuck with that stuff.
Yeah.
We make enough mistakes in this business, and over 20 years, you collect a whole warehouse full of mistakes, mismeasured windows, doors, what have you. I don't need you sticking me with that bill if you decide not to follow through with things.
Mm-hmm.
But it more than 33%. I don't see where it's necessary.
And all of that should be also in writing, correct?
100%. Yeah. Not only should it be in writing, but also like what the expectation is as far as what's the next benchmark as far as when they get paid. If I get a third now, and then, in 2 weeks, we're going to start your project. Do I want more money when I show up to begin the project? Do I want all of my money on the back end? Larger projects typically are going to have benchmarks. Once this is done, then we get the next check. Once this is done, we get the next check. Common sense, use your best judgment. If the guy's driving around in a $100,000, platinum F250 or F350, but he needs your 50% down payment in order to even consider starting this job, red flag.
All right. While we're still on the financial side of things, if a business is willing to offer you financing, is that a pro or a con, or is that just a thing?
So I think financing is a part of every financial decision now. I think more and more people finance more things than we ever have before. So I think that any purchase, realistically, when somebody offers you financing, I don't see any negatives in regards to that. But again, if you're doing $1,000 project and it's a 26% fee or 20% rate, then probably not in your best interest.
Yeah.
But no, I think that wise people, people that need the financing, people that don't need the financing, we finance people all the time that obviously could pay for this project, 10 times over and still probably never feel that pinch. And then we deal with clients that ultimately can't do projects without financing. So we offer financing on every single project. I think most service companies offer financing.
All right. And then last question on the financial front. If a company says, hey, we are willing to work with your insurance company, red flag, good thing, bad thing?
No. I think that any reputable contractor, especially like in our space, we deal with insurance companies quite often. I think when somebody says like, hey, we're willing to work with your insurance company, it should kind of take some of the burden off your shoulders. You should kind of get some relief out of that to know that you don't have to be the middleman. But again, with that, there's also some red flags that kind of tie into that. If somebody makes you sign a piece of paper that says like, hey, you're choosing us as your contractor, not necessarily a bad thing. if that piece of paper says like, hey, if we negotiate for you, and in the end, if you choose to go with somebody else, you still owe us 20% of the contract. I mean, that's a red flag to me.
Yeah.
We as a contractor are here to help people. We offer free consultations. We spend our time with people on a daily basis that we never actually do work with. So I think working with insurance companies is kind of that same thing. So it's telling people like, if we get you approved, you still owe us money. If you don't choose to use us, I think it's bad business in my personal opinion.
So I asked that question knowing what the answer was. I've sat in the office across the hall from you, and
Yeah.
I've heard you speaking with insurance companies on behalf of the homeowner,
Yeah.
and that especially dealing with the exterior of people's homes, dealing with roofing and siding and windows, the things that are often or most often impacted by weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a homeowner, I might deal with that 1-2 times in my lifetime. The exterior contractor, if they're reputable, they're dealing with that kind of work all the time. And so it
Yeah.
it should not be a red flag. In fact,
Yeah.
it could be a benefit to you as a consumer.
I mean, we deal with it on a daily basis. So when we have an opportunity to help somebody, work with their insurance company to ultimately get the approval that they're, owed in most situations, we have the documentation. We do it on a daily basis. We ultimately know what the code is. We know what the manufacturer install requires. So all the things that ultimately are needed in order to kind of successfully work a claim, we
Yep.
have all that information. So we could take a claim that might be drug out for months and months and months, and typically we can lessen that time frame by a considerable amount. But yeah, ultimately we're just here to help. We're here to be an advocate for the homeowner. Sometimes there's things that we know that you may not. We see homeowners, I don't want to say get ripped off by their insurance companies all the time, but we definitely see people get taken advantage of.
Shortchanged or yeah.
Yeah, quite often.
I mean, most reliable contractors will have a list of references that you as the homeowner can contact and say, hey, did this
Correct.
company really help you with your insurance claim? And
Yep.
tell me about that process. So, all right, I think the last thing that I wanted to talk about before I check with you if there were any topics that we didn't hit on was when you meet with a salesperson, that's one representative of the company. Most times they are not the one that's going to be doing the work. So there's going to be a
Correct.
crew of some sort on your roof, on the side of your house, in your home, whatever the job requires. What
Correct.
are some of the questions you're asking to get more information about the crew that company utilizes?
Well, so if you're specifically talking about like, are they employees that are going to come out and do the work, or are they going to be a subcontractor? I think when you ask that question, somebody's response, if you're going to use a subcontracting crew, you pretty much know right away. So if somebody stutters and says like, "Oh, well, they're employees," but if they stutter and say, well, they're, I mean, they're technically employees. They either are or they aren't. How long have they been working for your company? Do you have the same paperwork that we provide to you for business licensing and
Mm-hmm.
insurance and everything else? We as the business owner are required to get that same exact information from any subcontractors. So ultimately, like if somebody wanted proof that you have that insurance, it shouldn't be a really big issue for them to provide that information as well. Um, you're covering the consumer, so any single person that's on that job site, whether they're employee or subcontractor, should be covering the consumer in the same exact fashion. Um, so yeah, so if they're subcontractors, it's not real hard to just request like, hey, can I get the information for your subcontractor? I just want to make sure that he's also, properly insured and licensed and whatnot. And then, how long have you been working for the company? If a company is a reputable company, typically the subcontractors that they use have been around for years and years and years because they want to continue to do business with those contractors. If you talk to somebody, it's like, yeah, we started working for them a month ago. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of kinks to be worked out when you onboard a new subcontractor. It requires a lot of babysitting, a lot of hands-on training. We personally do hands-on training here in our shop. We do manufacturing training offsite. We do on-job training. It's not just installing things to manufacturing specs, but it's also installing things to our specs,
Right.
our expectations,
Yeah.
because there are times that our expectations and our specifications are going to be more stringent than what the manufacturer requires. We don't install things for today. We install things for ever.
Sure.
So, you know, uh, having that relationship in place and having that proper training, and it shouldn't take much to be able to prove that. Yeah. And then, I mean, honestly, like you could chat with the guys while they're on the job site and figure out whether or not it's all true.
And then just this came to mind as you were sharing about that. Is it pretty commonplace for reliable contractors to have a project coordinator, someone who is kind of seeing the job from beginning to end and kind of being the
Yes.
play caller, whatever kind of analogy you want to use?
Yes. So you're always going to have guys that are the installers. Those guys are, looking at directly what's in front of them. They may day to day plan out what they're trying to get done today and tomorrow. But ultimately, having a project coordinator, he's got all the information about the project that might not directly affect the people doing the work, but it might affect the other people that are going to be doing work there. So like when you're doing exteriors and you're doing siding, roofing, gutters, and windows and everything else, all of those products kind of, work together. But it may be 4 different people, 4 different crews installing those products. So a project manager is basically the one that kind of keeps an eye on the job site to make things are being done properly, make sure the install is being done accordingly. They're going to be taking pictures nonstop. They're going to be interacting with the homeowner. They're going to be the ones dealing with, permits and inspections, making sure that stuff's not blowing into the neighbor's yard, making sure the radio's not, super loud. If God forbid there's an incident on a job site where, somebody gets hurt, they're going to be the first point of contact for, caring for that person and figuring out what needs to be done in order to get them, fixed up, and then ultimately reporting back to the business.
Yep.
So they're the front line. Once your project is sold, it gets handed off essentially to your project coordinator. They're going to be your point of contact through the majority of the project. Always best to have a project coordinator.
So what I'm hearing you say is if a contracting company, we'll call them a general contractor, utilizes a subcontractor, that is not a red flag. In fact, that is very commonplace in the industry, but it's hugely beneficial to have that bridge between the parent company and the subcontractor in that project coordinator who is
correct
representing. And
Yep.
All right. So I just want to recap real quick what we've talked about. We've said that word of mouth can be your best friend. You want to check the company out online. Licenses and insurance are a must, but are not all created equal.
Correct.
Manufacturer partnerships can tell you a little bit more. It's another piece of the puzzle. How long has that company been in business? You want to get everything in writing. Don't underestimate your gut. You got to trust your gut. Don't be afraid to ask about the crew. Was there anything else that I said this last week, you are a consumer just as much as anyone else.
Yeah.
Anything else you're looking for when you're looking for a reliable contractor?
You can go into the really, really nitty gritty of the details, and you can say, how do they show up to the job site? Are they dressed appropriately? Do their clothes have holes and stains, or do they have a company shirt on versus just are they wearing a heavy metal T-shirt, an Orioles shirt, what have you? What's their vehicle look like? You can always do the test of saying walking out to the person's vehicle and looking into the person's vehicle typically is going to tell you kind of how they're going to treat your home. A clean vehicle typically means they're going to probably keep your home pretty tidy. If you go out to their house and it's like, 3 weeks worth of, fast food bags and, 9-year-old business cards stuffed up in the dashboard, and it looks like it hasn't been vacuumed since they bought the thing. That person doesn't care for their own stuff. So asking them or expecting them more or less to care for your own property is a little risky. So
Yeah.
So those little details can often tell you a lot. Not always to say that the person's a bad person. It's just, those are the little things you have to make up in your mind how much weight they hold. So.
Yep. Okay. Goodness, that's a lot. That's a lot to take in. I'm grateful that there's a pause button on these podcasts and you can rewind as you need to. Aaron, thank you for being the expert and for sharing all the information that's jangling around up there in that noggin of yours. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, Cole.
All right. That is all we have for you today on the You Ask the Pros Answer. Hey, would you please help us continue to get the word out about our show? The best way to do this is to leave reviews on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on social media or simply tell a friend. Also, if you are watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, before we go, we want to hear from you. What are some of the questions you have related to exterior home remodeling? Maybe the process involved, the options that are out there, topics just like what we touched on today. Send your questions to info@askproexteriors.com and put "You Ask" in the subject. We would love to feature your question on an upcoming episode. If you are facing an upcoming home project, we hope this episode has empowered you to tackle it with confidence. Remember, knowledge is power, and a little bit of research can go a long way. Until next time, happy homeowning. The You Ask the Pros Answer podcast is produced in-house by the Pro Exteriors team. Pro Exteriors is the exterior contracting division of Empire Construction Group, LLC. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. For more answers to your questions, please subscribe to this channel and podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Do you have an upcoming home remodeling project? Find more answers to your questions at askproexteriors.com.